another day of Heart Snuggles, and we're so stoked that you're here today. I brought a really special guest from a community that we're both in with Natalia Benson, and I'd love if you introduced yourself.
Oh, thank you so much, Lexi. I'm like super, super excited to be here today. So my name is Dr. Silvia Odorcic, and I'm a lifestyle medicine physician based out of Toronto. So I live in Canada, and my passion is just to inspire, educate, and empower people to live longer and stronger.
Oof, love that. Quality of life is so important, I think. So that I love that you do that and share a bit about what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I'd love to. So, my journey kind of started about 4 years ago. So, what happened was I was watching a documentary on Netflix called What the Health. I don't know if you've seen it or not, but if you haven't, I'd recommend to go because it's really good. Well, it changed my life. So clearly it's amazing. And I remember just being like so stunned at this documentary because I was like, why did nobody tell us about this in medical school? And basically, what the documentary does is it interviews athletes, physicians, and health professionals about a plant based lifestyle. So I remember just being blown away by the documentary. And that night, I just like took a massive deep dive and started Googling like all things nutrition. I Googled plant based, like, was what they were saying true or not? Because it seemed kind of a stretch, especially given the fact that it wasn't introduced to us in our medical training. And that was the start of it. And I became super, super passionate after many courses and becoming a lifestyle medicine physician myself about the power of nutrition to completely transform our lives. So, because of that passion, I have now sort of made it my sole purpose to help people empower themselves and change their lives through nutrition, fitness, and mindset.
That's amazing. I love how it sometimes just takes like one thing that just resonates so deeply and you're like, whoa. Yeah, especially going through medical school too. That's sad that they teach you nothing about it. So how has that been like amongst your peers learning about this and stepping into this like plant-based lifestyle?
Oh my gosh, Lexi, honestly, I don't even know where to start. Like, so the first part was just introducing the concept to my family. And I remember when I told them, like, I use the word plant based as opposed to vegan. And that's because I think sometimes people get really scared by the word vegan. And plus, there's also sort of ethical implications to that. And for me, the ethical part of veganism, I didn't quite understand it, and it didn't come into play for me until probably about six months into being plant-based. So plant-based, when people talk about plant-based, that's usually for health reasons. So I switched over for health reasons because I was reading all this literature that like removing saturated fat and animal products actually helped lower our risk of chronic diseases. And when I say chronic disease, I mean everything from hypertension and type 2 diabetes to cardiovascular disease. Like it's very powerful. So for me, I kind of used that as a foray. And I was like, hey guys, I think I announced it one day at dinner. I was like, hey everyone, I've gone plant based. Like I won't be eating meat and dairy products anymore and cheese. And I just remember the faces of my family. They were like, okay. Okay, what? Not eggs? I was like, no, no eggs. They're like, what about fish? You need fish. I'm like, no, I mean, I think I'll keep it on for a little while because my own family doctor told me that I needed to eat fish. So I was like, maybe I'll keep on fish, but not really. Like it'll be mostly plants. And I remember my mom just looking at me and being like, what are you gonna eat all day? Salad? Like lettuce? And it was just so hilarious. So that's where it started. It started with just like introducing the concept to my family. And at first, I think they just thought it was just something I was trying out, like a diet, like a thing that I would try for a while. They couldn't really understand why I was doing it. I mean, they understood the health implications, but I don't think they understood at a deeper level. And they thought like after a couple months it would just go away. But it's been 4.5 years later, and it is just growing and expanding, and it's sort of taken root on a level that I never could have imagined. So that's how I introduced it to my family. But now they're all on board, but like the questions were kind of shooting at me left, right, and center. So it was a big change for everyone.
And how about in your practice? with your
Oh my
client?
gosh. Yeah. So, like in my practice, so I was actually trained as an ophthalmologist, an eye doctor. So, what I tried to do is I started incorporating it into my ophthalmology practice. And, in ophthalmology, it's very high volume. So, like you see sometimes upwards of 40, 50 patients, 60 a day, right? So you might only get like 10 minutes with the patient. And at the end of examining their eye or whatever, I would try to kind of sneak it in and be like, okay, guys, you realize that your diabetes could be massively improved by eating more plants, and sort of here's a documentary, or here's a good website, Forks Over Knives or nutritionfacts.org that you can check out. But really there wasn't much time. Like, I don't know, I mean, I don't know what your experience has been with doctors, but sometimes it's like you're in, you're out, and you don't even have time to sort of really get to the depth of the matter. So I felt the same thing on the other end as a physician. I felt like I didn't have time in that setting, at least, to explain to them what nutrition could do. So that's why I retrained as a lifestyle medicine physician. And so that's sort of a secondary board certification that I have. And I use it kind of separately in the sense that I help coach patients and clients through online consultations and through courses, but that's separate from the ophthalmology practice.
Yeah, I always feel that way with doctors, and that's one of the reasons I switched into more naturopathy sometimes, because like you get a full hour with them sometimes, and so we can actually like dive into that stuff. But I love how you still like were so passionate and like tried to get it in there, and then you did another certification. I think that's so beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, I tried, but I think the best way to, I guess, kickstart a transformation is like exactly what you said, Lexi. It's just you have to give someone a safe container and time, right? So, and oftentimes a session will last, the first session with somebody will last over an hour for me, because I need to sort of get that extensive lifestyle intake for people. I need to hear all about their nutrition, their fitness, their sleep, their emotional well-being, and that can't be done in 10 minutes. Like, let's just be honest. So,
Yes, awesome. And what does it look
yeah.
like? Have you seen transformations in your patients that have switched or incorporated more veggies?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so many. I'm working with a handful of amazing women right now, and we've been doing sort of multiple coaching and health sessions, and even ones that were vegan, but that sort of switch more to a whole food plant-based lifestyle, which is a pillar of lifestyle medicine. I've seen massive transformations. So not only does their mood and energy increase, but their weight, they start losing weight, and we work towards hitting their ideal target weight. And then we sort of add in movement and fitness to sort of help them either lose weight or maintain the weight. And yeah, I've seen them just become energized, show up as sort of the stronger version of themselves. And what I found was so cool is that they start to take a real, how do I put it? They start to like really become passionate about their health. I think that when you invest in a good coach or a course, your sovereignty comes out. So you realize you are the captain of your own ship, and you start to steer that ship in a direction that you want to go. And it's super powerful. Like that whole sense of like authority and sovereignty over one's life and one's health, it sort of becomes their guiding light. So just watching that transformation in people is like, it just fills my heart. I love it.
It's so magical to give that gift, and that's how I felt too. I am pretty much fully plant-based. I do occasionally eat fish when I go out, but I never buy it, and I pretty much call myself that, and I've like had so many changes in my body and in my life, and it really does impact every layer of it. And it's just so cool. Like I used to have so many more health problems and all these other things, and really it's just my body just loves eating so many veggies. But I do want to talk about how now that it's becoming more mainstream, there's so much processed vegan food, and people think they're going healthy by being vegan, but then they're eating like a bunch of bad stuff. So how do you help people guide them to make sure that they're not just like they're getting a balanced diet?
Yeah, that's an amazing point. I didn't actually realize that you were predominantly plant-based. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we just really connected on so many levels. But yeah, you're totally right. So the thing is, the plant-based space is really expanding. I'm sure many people have heard of Beyond Meat, Impossible Burger. These things are sort of becoming sort of mainstream. You can go to Burger King and Subway. Like all these plant-based alternatives are being introduced, which I think on the one hand, it of course it is good because when you remove animal products off your plate, you're not only helping your health, but you're helping the planet. And of course, you're saving all the sentient beings. And if anyone wants to take a deeper dive into sort of animal agriculture and how detrimental it could be to our planet, I would just watch like Cowspiracy, for example. That's a really good one, just to get a sense of like, what are we doing to our planet with this massive animal agriculture? And I think it's so on the one hand, like I don't want to discount it or say it's negative in that sense, because of course it's helping us on an environmental level. But when it comes to our health, I'll always, always, always stick to one of my main tenets for anybody that's listening, which is whole, unprocessed foods. So if you can just focus your nutrition around that, you will be making massive, massive gains in your health. And when we talk about unprocessed, that just means like, first of all, a simple way to figure it out is like the thing that you're buying isn't does not have labels on it with tons of ingredients. So if it's got one or two ingredients, or if it is produce, obviously it doesn't require any labels, it's a whole food. The other thing is, of course, there are all these sort of vegan or plant-based transition products, which are good for once in a while. Like nothing, I don't want to knock them, right? Like I just had a Beyond Burger at um, like a holiday party recently, and I felt fine. Like everyone else was having a regular burger. I had the Beyond Burger. I was cool with it. It was all good, but it's not something I have every day. And for many clients that I work with, like they come in as vegans. So they're vegan for ethical reasons, but their nutrition isn't necessarily dialed in. So I actually help them to transition off of these processed vegan products into more whole food, plant-based nutrition. So that can be really, really powerful. Just making a small shift, like for example, making your own burgers at home out of beans or, veggies, all these things, lentils, sweet potatoes. Like this can be so satiating and amazing. And you just freeze a bunch, right? Like you go nuts, you meal prep on a Sunday, you freeze all of your burgers and you have burgers for weeks, right? And that way you know that you're nourishing yourself with whole foods. But you also don't have to give up that eating that burger, like you go crazy with the fixins, put the pickles on, mustard, whatever you want, but just know that you're nourishing yourself with the best food as opposed to the processed stuff all the time.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's truly simple. Like you just take a little bit of extra time to find recipes, but there's so many. But one thing I was noticing with friends, like when you go out, there used to be all these incredible vegan burgers, but they've all switched to Impossible and Beyond. And I'm like, no, like keep the good beet burger, the bean burger, because it's so much better for us. But as you said, like of course, every once in a while it's okay. But yeah, I personally use Pinterest to find a ton of recipes. There's so many good vegan cookbooks now. Like we're at a time where it's so easy to like eat really delicious vegan food, and there's so many resources to find really yummy recipes.
Yes, I totally agree. Honestly, there's like, so a couple of really good ones that I like that are whole foods and that are usually no oil are Forks Over Knives is a good one. Nutritionfacts.org, that's Dr. Michael Greger's site. He's got so many evidence-based videos about anything you like. If you want to know, do the soy cause man boobs, you go there. Like that is the go-to. Okay. There is Minimalist Baker. She does a little more sort of sweet stuff, but she's got great recipes. Another one is Carly. So she's a Canadian and her Instagram is PlantYou. She is excellent. And the reason I love Carly is because her recipes are simple. Like it's not like a 20 ingredient thing. It's usually like 3 to 5 ingredients at most, and it's no oil, which I really like. And for anyone out there that's wondering, like, what is all this oil talk about? For me personally, based on the evidence that I've read, oil is extremely calorically dense. So it's the most calorically dense food on the planet. And even a couple of tablespoons can put you at 300 calories extra in the day. And you don't want that because that's going to translate to obviously weight gain. And you want to kind of make sure that you're eating a variety and abundance of foods, but that they're not necessarily calorically dense, that they're nutrient dense. So whole plant foods are nutrient dense, but they're not calorically dense. So personally, I don't use much oil. And for many people that I work with, cutting out that oil and using, for example, veggie broth to saute your veggies or something like that makes a big difference.
Yeah, and tastes so good too. Like I love cooking just even my rice and veggie broth, and that makes it so flavorful. So that's a great tip. And I do use oil. I've only used like avocado oil, but still it's the same. So that's something I want to cut back on. And sometimes even you can just cook with water too in the pan. Like you don't have to use oil. And I think that we're always told to. And of course it makes it like crispy and all those things, but it can still taste so good. And just add some spices and you're all set.
Yeah, I love that, Lexi. Like, I think that herbs and spices are two of the most underrated things. And when it comes to flavor, just adding fresh herbs, holy smokes, that can just boost a smoothie, or just topping like with some basil or parsley, like a sauce or something. It just boosts the flavor without having to resort to like excessive salt or, oil packed dressings that are just made with these inflammatory oils. So those are some good tips, I think, for people.
And let's talk about soy because you said it really briefly, but I know that's a big thing. Like people are like, soy is so bad for you. So can you touch on that?
Yeah, I'd love to. So this is kind of a loaded topic and a common, I think, myth or misconception. And it was for me too. It was very confusing. Like when I went plant-based, I remember one of the first things I read was some blog, and I don't even know who wrote it. But it was like a person that was a nutrition expert. They had a large following on Instagram, and they seemed believable and reliable to me, but they had all this information on how soy caused breast cancer, how soy was feminizing, meaning if you're a man, you'd get you can get breast tissue enlargement, all these things. And then the other big thing was soy is GMO. Soy is GMO. Don't eat soy, right? So, after looking into it and taking a plant-based nutrition course through Cornell, actually, I was able to look at the evidence and really see that all of that, those are myths. Like there's no strong evidence backing it up. So all the evidence actually points to the fact that soy is protective. So soy is a big component in a lot of Asian diets, like and the Japanese eat a lot of soy. And in fact, their incidence of breast cancer and sort of perimenopausal symptoms, so like the hot flashes and stuff, those are actually made better with soy. And soy has been shown not only to decrease your incidence of certain cancers like breast, but also when you eat soy afterwards to decrease your recurrence. And that's really important. So it's important for people to understand that several servings of soy a day are okay. Now, obviously, you're not going to go nuts. You're not going to do 5 or 6 servings. But for me personally, I'll have soy is my plant milk of choice. So I'll have 2 to 3 cups of soy a day in different variations, and a latte and overnight oats or whatever. And then I'll probably have tofu or edamame 2 or 3 times a week. So that's how my soy pans out, and it's a great source of calcium. It's also fortified with vitamin D and all these things. So soy is great. Really, the evidence is strong that it's healthful, and it is not detrimental. So I would definitely, whoever is like kind of still on the fence with soy, I'd say try it, and soy has so many forms. So go for the unsweetened soy milk, try that. Go for the the tofu. There's tempeh, which is sort of the fermented soy. It's a little bit of a nutty flavor. And there's edamame, which is the immature soybeans. And those are really, really healthy. And you can make them in like 3 minutes. You just boil them from frozen and use them on top of a salad. I mix them into pasta. It's wonderful.
Yes, agreed. That was one of my first things too. I was like, I'm so confused because everyone told me not to eat soy, but I did some research too, and I was like, okay, it's actually not that bad. I personally can't eat too much of it because then my body's like doesn't agree. But everyone just listen to your body always, like you said, and also look at the ingredients. Like maybe some weird companies are putting weird stuff in it. So if you don't reckon, if it's not like 100% pure soy, or then don't get that.
Yeah, that's actually a good point, Lexi. So I didn't actually touch on the GMO part, but most of the soy that's made for consumption is non-GMO. So the GMO soy is the one that's fed to the animals. And so people get really confused about that, but that's very important. So when you go, like I actually haven't been able to find soy milk that is not organic. All the soy milk that I get at the grocery store, it's organic, it's non-GMO, and so is the tofu and the other soy that I eat in its other forms. So the GMO soy is actually the soy that you'd get through the animal feed. So if anything, if you want to be avoiding that, then if anything, you would want to decrease your animal products and increase your organic non-GMO soy consumption.
That's so funny. Yeah. Yeah. And it's also funny to think like animals, most of the animals that we meat eaters eat plants. Like they just eat plants, and so let's talk about that. Like first off, I know you run marathons, so let's talk about like protein. When people are like, how are you getting enough protein? That's like the most common question. And you like being a marathoner, like maybe weave those two in together.
Yeah, I love that. So yeah, it's actually been a bit over a week since I ran my first solo marathon. And okay, so get this. So this came up as a sort of an idea that I got from Jesse Itzler. So I don't know if you've heard of Jesse Itzler. If you haven't, look him up. He is such an incredible guy. He is plant-based. He's an entrepreneur and he's married to Sarah Blakely of Spanx. So I'm sure you've heard of Spanx. They're both like a power couple duo. But Jesse Itzler has a coaching program, which is called Build Your Life Resume. And in it, he's like, okay, guys, everybody in this year in 2021, you're going to pick one year defining event, and he calls it a misogi. So the misogi, the year defining event, has to be something that's large enough to scare you and something outside of your comfort zone. So I was thinking about it and I was like, what am I going to do? And for me, like I'd never been a runner. So I started running about a year ago, and the furthest I'd run was 5 kilometers, which is like 3 miles. It's about half an hour. It's nothing. It's 20 minutes. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to run a marathon. And the idea just popped into my head. Actually, I had a dream about it. So weird. I had a dream I was running a marathon and I woke up and the dream was so lucid. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with lucid dreaming, but it felt so real. And I couldn't distinguish like the dream and reality. And I remember thinking, like when I woke up, I remember thinking, have I run it yet or not? And so I was like, no, I haven't run it. This was a dream. And then automatically in my mind, I'm like, I have to run it now. I have to run it. So, and it has to be in the pandemic because in my dream, I was running in a pandemic because at some point the cops came and they're like, excuse me, miss, you can't be running here. You have to social distance. So in my dream, I was being forced to social distance. So when I woke up, I knew that I had to run a marathon in the pandemic. So I made it my year defining event. So I put on my calendar, I gave myself 5 months to train, and it was incredible. Like, I don't even have enough words to describe it, but it was such a journey of ups and downs. I went through heat exhaustion. I went through a muscle injury. I went through days when I thought I couldn't do it. I went through days when I was like hitting my best, my PRs, which are personal records, and I was tracking everything with an app. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm getting faster. I'm getting better at this. And I was increasing my long runs on the weekend. And I remember hitting like 10K. I was like, this is crazy. Can I do any more than this? And then 20K, I was like, this is a half marathon. Shall I keep going? And after 5 months, I was like, I'm ready. I'm ready to do the 42K. So I did that a week ago. And for anyone out there that is like thinking of getting back into running, or just like thinking of doing that hard thing, I would just say go for it. And every year, pick one thing that's going to define your year. So when you look back 5, 10 years from now, you're going to be like, that pandemic year was the year I ran a marathon, or that pandemic year I started a podcast, or I wrote the outline for my book, or I created my course, right, Lexi? Whatever, like whatever that year is, like that's, you're going to always remember that. So yeah, it was incredible. And honestly, I felt like in having a plant-based diet that my recovery was much better between my runs. So of course I had some inflammation, but I was foam rolling and using a Terragun, which is like a little massager, and taking care of my nutrition and my sleep. And I was able to do it just exactly as planned. In fact, I told myself when I started the marathon, I was like, I want to do it in 5 hours, which is a pretty good pace for me for beginner. And I did it in like 5 hours and 5 minutes or something. Like it was just mind blowing. So yeah, it was incredible. So in terms of, oh, your second question was protein. Yeah. So in terms of the protein, so that's one thing that I think athletes or people that are getting into the plant-based world always hear about, like being protein deficient, because when we think of protein, we think of meat, right? We think of like that burger dripping in blood or whatever, the meaty thing that's like full of iron and protein and whatever. But yeah, that's one thing I found out again through my courses and through reading the evidence, is that we are not protein deficient. Like look around, I've never admitted a patient into the hospital for protein deficiency. Like that just doesn't happen in North America. It happens when you are malnourished in Africa. It's called kwashiorkor. So it only happens when your calories overall are deficient. But to say that someone is going to be deficient in protein, I mean, unless you're following some bizarre diet where you're not eating any protein, that is super, super rare. So I wouldn't get hung up on protein. I mean, there are many plant-based protein sources. If you guys want, on my Instagram, I've got tons of nutrition infographics. I have like plant-based sources of protein down there, how much to eat, plant-based sources of iron. But yeah, just know that if you eat a well-balanced whole foods diet, you won't be lacking in protein.
So proud of you for running that marathon. That's amazing.
Thank you. It was like a day I'll always remember.
Oh, so magical. And thanks for also sharing about the protein. Yeah, it's such a funny thing. Like that's people's main comeback. I'm like, no, no. You're gonna be fine. And and now that it's grown, like there's so many like bodybuilders and all these things to like show you like they're getting massive muscle and they're vegan. So
Yes, yes. And Game Changers, have you seen it? Game Changers on Netflix. So Game Changers is James Cameron's, he's the director of the movie, and it features all these plant-based athletes. So if anyone out there is like looking for a movie that specifically talks about athletics and plant-based lifestyle, Game Changers is like for you.
perfect. I'll have to check that out. Last thing I'll touch on before we finish is your spirituality. So we're both pretty spiritual beings. So how do you incorporate that with yourself and with your patients?
Oh, I love that. Actually, I'd love to hear more about how you do too, but I don't know if maybe we'll do it on a separate time. But I think spirituality for me, it really flowed through. It came through when I went plant-based. So before that, I was just in the throes of a decade of medical training. I wasn't taking care of myself. I was eating processed foods. I wasn't sleeping. I think I didn't have time to really dig into spirituality and why I was even on this planet. Like it never really crossed my mind, sadly. But the second I went plant-based, I started following all these people on Instagram. And what I noticed was that through the feeds, some of them were ethical vegans. And at that time, I didn't understand what that meant, like the difference between plant-based for health and being vegan for the animals, for example. So I started getting all this information about animal agriculture and how animals are sentient beings, how even, even fish, for example, people say fish don't have feelings, but like it's so not true. Fish obviously can feel pain. Um, I started reading about all this stuff. And then I start to think about my place on this planet as a human, the fact that my innate quality is love and that I didn't want to hurt anything. And so I made a commitment to myself that going forward, I would never eat animals again, not just for my health. Like initially the reason was selfish, right? But then later I think the reason morphed into something so much bigger than myself. And I wanted to inspire others and educate others about how incredible it is to eat more plants, not only because you're going to live a long life, but because you have that sense that when your head hits the pillow at night, you didn't hurt anything. You're trying your best not to inflict suffering on animals. And that to me became so important. And so I found Natalia Benson, who's our mutual sort of spiritual coach and mentor. And through her work, I started meditating. I started having a gratitude practice, journaling, like mantras, all the things, like all the things. Like I think working with Natalia has opened me up to all like crystals, goddess oracle decks, stuff that if you said like these words to me a few years ago, I'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like you're speaking in another language. But it's just been beautiful and just reading more about spirituality. So for me, for example, Eckhart Tolle. I love Eckhart Tolle. The Power of Now and A New Earth are two of my favorite books. And I think I've read The New Earth like two or three times now. So just getting into that and really figuring out not only why are you on this planet, but what are you put here to do? Like we're all here for a reason. And once we figure that out, we're unstoppable. Like we are unstoppable in our mission. And that's how I feel. I feel like I'm finally adding some fuel to my fire, my soul purpose, and it's just going to continue to expand and grow. And I'm so excited to see where it goes.
Yes, what a beautiful journey. And I love it. Just, it always starts for me, and like from what I hear, it's the curiosity. That's like what really gets it going, because it's like there's so much more to life than just this mundane thing I do every day. And like what actually makes me happy and what brings me joy and how can I make an impact. So that's so cool that you've had this journey and it's only the beginning.
Yeah, I love it. I can't wait. I think if there's one thing I would leave people with is just the sense of, and I think it's a Tony Robbins quote. It's like constant and never ending improvement. If there's anything we can do is just self-growth. Just continue to grow, continue to push your boundaries, continue to learn and stay curious and stay open. And when you do that, like the world is just going to continue to expand for you. It's just, it never ends. It literally, I DM'd someone, I was like, in my last breath, I'm going to know that until that point, I was always learning and growing. And even on my last days, whatever I'm doing, like I'm never going to stop growing. And that's a commitment that I'm just going to hold to myself forever.
That's my favorite part too, is that you're always the student and the teacher. And it's like at first it was debilitating. I'm like, oh, so I never get, like there's never an ending, but it's actually that's the most beautiful part, is it's a continual, there's always so many layers to go and so much more to learn. So thank you so much.
Yes.
It's been so beautiful. We'll definitely have you back on here. But for now, how can people find you and what are you offering?
Oh, thank you, Lexi. This has been such a fun convo. And I feel like we've only scratched the surface. I feel like we could probably go on for another 4 hours, but but yeah, so you can connect with me on Instagram. I'm most active there. So my handle is at dr.silvia, SILVIA.MD. And my website is the same name. So www.drsilviamd.com. I would love to connect with you. Like if there's any way that I can help you in your own spiritual journey, in your own, nutrition transition, or if you just want to dial in your lifestyle habits or your fitness or anything like that, I'm there for you. I work with people one on one. So I do personal lifestyle medicine consultations and coaching, but I also have online courses. And one of my ultimate faves is the Supercharge Your Nutrition course. So this is a 4-week course. It's all self-paced and online. You can take it anytime. And it is literally everything that I've learned in my own journey as a lifestyle medicine doctor. So the last 4.5 years collapsed into 4 weeks. It's evidence-based. It teaches you about how to get more plants on your plate and how to have incredible clarity and confidence in how you're nourishing yourself, because that's something that I wish I had when I started 4 years ago. I had no clue what I was doing. I was like watching documentaries, reading this, getting certified in that, following this person on Instagram. But if I had something that was evidence based and sort of curated knowledge, I think that it would have made my transition a lot smoother. So, yeah, can't wait to connect with you guys.
Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Lexi, for having me on. I'm so excited to continue to grow with you.